Hello, sweet friends. I'm Hannah. This is Sweet Fern Homestead, and it is week 2 of the Every Bit Counts challenge hosted by the Three Rivers Homestead. I've seen so many new faces, either from watching your videos from the challenge or from you coming over and saying hello to me. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for all the connections that we're forming through this challenge. So a huge thank you to Jessica and to all of you for your support. Let's get to it. What happened this week in the preservation world? So the first thing is 8 pints of onion jam. I did a whole video on that. It's our favorite condiment. We love it. Then we've got 5 pints of a fennel parsley relish. And I am going to grow fennel every year now just for this. It is absolutely delicious. I was also able to get 2 pints, not quite full, so I'll probably do another round of them just to kind of pack those jars full, of sun-dried tomatoes, which aren't actually sun-dried. You put them in the dehydrator. So I'm using my little like grape tomatoes for those. Then I've got celery powder. So the celery powder is very much like the onion powder. I either use the onion tops or the green onion tops, and I slice them up and put them in the dehydrator, and then I put them in the blender, grind them up to a powder, and get them in my jar. Celery is the same way. Celery leaves go in the dehydrator, then in the blender, grind them up into a powder, put them in a jar. And because a huge bowl of celery leaves goes down to the tiniest little bit of powder, you can imagine that just a little teaspoon of that in a soup, in something that you're, cooking, is going to add huge flavor. My kids don't love celery and they don't love onion in their food. They also don't like carrots, so I'm considering doing a carrot powder too. So I'm thinking when I do a soup, to be able to get that flavor that I love, I can add these powders in without them having to feel like they're eating foods that right now they just don't like. And I didn't like onions when I was younger either, and so eventually we kind of grow into new tastes and develop new flavors that we're, able to eat and we're comfortable with. But for now, they don't. So I was able to freeze 2 quarts of chili, and we were able to eat chili twice. This is a turkey chili. It's my most requested recipe that people ask me for. I did make a video on it. I have to look at the footage and make sure it came out okay, but if it did, then I'll post that. We've got 1 gallon of perpetual spinach for the freezer. I'm just slowly freezing greens. What I do is chop the greens, blanch them, and then put them into muffin tins, and then put those little green muffins, into a gallon baggie. That goes into the freezer. Whenever we need greens, we can just pull them out in little portions. I was also able to freeze a gallon of spaghetti squash. Now, the reason I did this is because it was my last spaghetti squash from last year. It was huge. I cooked it up because I was worried it was going to go bad, but it was just, so good. Absolutely delicious. And then the last thing is just a pint of currants. We got some currants at the farmer's market. I used some of them for pancakes, and then I used another bit of them to make a syrup to go on French toast, and then the rest of them I'm just freezing. I don't love them. I'm not sure it's something I would necessarily grow, although they're absolutely beautiful and stunning. I don't love the little seed that you kind of bite into. They get stuck in my teeth, and they kind of aren't great for my belly, but that's it. That's what we did. So it was a good week, but next week there's going to be a lot. So week 3, I'm guessing I'm going to do curtido. I will do a full video on that. That's a Salvadorian fermented cabbage, sauerkraut slaw. I have a ton of kidney fat, so I'm going to make lard. I've got that in the freezer. I need to make a bunch of broth. I may do more dried beans. I haven't decided yet. And I'm just going to keep freezing greens. Maybe peppers will be ready to do some hot sauce. So we'll see. So I'm just kind of keeping in mind like where I'm headed for week 3, what foods are coming out of the garden. I think I'll have my first carrot harvest coming too. So this recipe is from Naturally Sweet Food in Jars. It's called fennel parsley relish, I believe. It was so easy to make, and it's sweetened with grape juice concentrate. I wasn't able to find that, but I did find an organic white grape juice that had used white grape juice concentrate, so I just added a little bit more than the half cup that the recipe called for, and figured the water would just kind of cook off of it. It is delicious. This is absolutely delicious, this relish. I had a little bit on a quesadilla I made this morning for breakfast, and oh my goodness, it's so good. Let me show it to you. Can you see that? Oh my goodness. It is delicious, you guys. It's like canning bonanza today. All right, so why do people who homestead and grow their own food and shop locally and eat grass-fed, pastured, raised meats make so many condiments? Why are our pantry shelves filled with chutneys and relishes and pickles and jams and sauces, barbecue sauces, and just the whole like? We do it because basically what we eat is incredibly simple and seasonal. So in the winter, we might go and get a quarter cow from a farm, or we might harvest our own meat birds or pork or whatever it is. And then that's what we're eating. So we're not going to the store and being like, I'm gonna have pork today and beef tomorrow and fish the next day and chicken the next day. It's not that. It's you're eating one or two usually, and then maybe throwing in a local fish or something like that. Protein sources, and they're all from the same animal or from the same time that you've raised like a bunch of meat birds or whatever. So you want to keep things interesting. If you have the quarter cow and say maybe you have pork too, you've got, beef and pork that you're making. And so you want like an Asian plum sauce for your pork to make pork meatballs. You want these interesting chutneys for tacos when you shred the beef, a fennel parsley relish to go on that taco, different sauerkrauts, different salsas. Because you're not like going into a recipe book and just buying like 20 ingredients for one recipe. You are using what's in your pantry. So that fennel that you grew, that parsley that you grew, the zucchini that you grew, the rhubarb that you grew, the cranberries that maybe you source locally if you can't grow them, strawberries that you grew or sourced locally, whatever it is, all of those things that you have then put on the shelf, it livens up those meals. It makes them more interesting, and it creates this whole world of flavors. You've already done that work. All you have to do is defrost the meat, defrost the veggies, and then you've got this beautiful meal that can kind of transport you to whatever flavor profile that you've created for it. So that's why. It's not like you're making zucchini relish because you're going to fill up on that. It's so that it will add into this meal and make it more interesting. And then, it just feels like you have this whole world available to you of flavors and foods. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So when you're getting started canning, when you're learning to water bath can, you're going to be like, I'm just making pickles and jam and relish. Yes, and those things will do wonderfully for you. So you go to the farmer's market and you buy local potatoes, and then you can use your relish or your pickles to make potato salad. You can use some of the juice from your bread and butter pickles to make deviled eggs. There are so many different ways you can use these things. A jam can become a barbecue sauce later. So if you get some pastured pork and you want to do a beautiful barbecue, maybe a barbecue taco, you can take that jam and add some things to it, like a cider vinegar and some spices, and you will create a beautiful barbecue sauce. So that's why we do it. It's not because we're just like eating jam and relish out of a jar and saying, yay, this will sustain me. No, it's to add beauty to these recipes. These are 1/2 inch headspace, and they're going to cook for 10 minutes. You want to make sure you have about 2 inches of water covering the jars for water bath canning. So I'll be adding some more water to this. So if you see the size of those grow bags, and there are 4 of them, and this is the complete potato harvest from 4 bags. It's, one would say, probably not, this would be one crop that might just not have been worth the soil and the water. But the water is actually the issue. So if you look in here, these are basically potatoes that would have been nice looking, kind of like fingerling potatoes, but they couldn't grow because there was no rain. We've been in a drought. This is potatoes in a drought. And even with some supplemental watering, there's just no way in a grow bag that these can get to size. So I'm certainly grateful for all of them. I have a lot more grow bags, but in the past I've filled up like every basket I own, and I'm wondering if we're even going to fill up this one basket. So it's just sort of like, you know, last year was incredible potato harvest. This year it's not, and every year just has its year. But you know, what we're gonna get is some really incredible potatoes, like potatoes that you can't even imagine how good they are because they're homegrown. So yes, they're babies, but with a little butter and salt, these babies are delicious. So these are just a few glimpses of what I've been doing, and hope that this inspires you to just put up a tiny bit of food, just a little bit of something every single day. It adds up. Every bit counts. Thank you, Jessica, for hosting this challenge. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.